Hey, Family Adventure, this is Sam, and today we are continuing our Better Together teaching series. And we've been looking at this idea that God has created us for relationship. And in the church, one of the ways that we work out the relationship is through our community, through our connection. And so we've been looking at these one another statements all throughout the Bible that talk about how do we interact with one another as a community. In those deep relationships, how do we interact with one another? And so today we're looking at this idea, the idea of sharing each other's burdens. And what does that mean? What does that look like? So in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, the Apostle Paul writes, share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ. The assumption that is given is that we will have burdens in life. We will have struggles. We will have difficulties. Even as Christians, we will have challenges in our life. And we are called to step in and bear each other's burdens, to help each other with that. One of the ways we do that, he says the verse right before this, is with this idea of temptation in sin. And when I fall into sin, and then when I feel like I'm stuck, and how do I get back on the right path? He says, well, bear each other's burdens, help each other in that. But there's many other ways that we bear each other's burdens, not just with temptation, but there's a lot of other things. And when he talks about this word, bearing each other's burdens, the idea he's giving is not something that's light and something that's small and something that's insignificant, but actually it's something that is excessively heavy. It's too much for me. It's too big for me. I can't do it. It's something that feels overwhelming for me. And he says, help each other with that. Step in and help each other with those challenges, with those burdens. And so some of the burdens that we might carry are things like maybe it's relationship issues that just feel overwhelming. Maybe it's financial struggles. Maybe it is disappointment in life. Maybe it's illness or sickness. Maybe it's death or loss of a loved one. Maybe if you're a parent, it's parenting, feeling like this is overwhelming. I don't know what to do. But there are things in life that feel overwhelming for us. And the invitation for us is to help each other with that, to bear each other's burdens. When people are feeling overwhelmed, all right, how can I step in and help you with this? Understanding the Bible, there's definitely this invitation that God gives to us that when you are burdened, that we can go to God. In fact, Jesus in Matthew 11 says, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. There's understanding that we're invited to God to find release from our burdens. But part of God's gift and his blessing is saying, I've given you each other. And part of the way that we find relief and we find strength and we work through these challenges and burdens in our life is with one another and having other people come alongside and carry those things with us. And for us to, in turn around and carry those for other people. But I think there's a couple challenges for us that keep us from bearing each other's burdens. And I think the first thing is maybe vulnerability and the capacity that we have to actually say, here is a burden in my life. Here's a struggle in my life. Here's something that's difficult for me. This is one of the things we talked about in our small group last week is the idea of the longer we're in a community and in a small group together, the more that vulnerability grows and that safety grows. And it's such a beautiful thing to have that sort of a place where I can say, all right, here I am, and it's challenging, it's messy. And yet I have people to help me process through that. But I think that's one of the things for us is vulnerability. Is sometimes we're not willing to say what those burdens are. We want to keep people at a distance, keep them away, and I'm just going to I'm going to put on the facade and I want to keep things safe. So I think that's one of the things that keeps us from carrying each other's burdens is we don't know what other people's burdens are. I think the other thing that keeps us from carrying each other's burdens is that we just don't want to get involved. We're like, my life's busy. I've got a lot going on. My kids have things. I have things. Is it just going to be messy and drama? I don't want to get involved in that. Is it going to cost me money? Is it going to cost me time? that's inconvenient for me. And so I think that's the other thing that keeps us from this. And yet the invitation that we have, in fact, the command we have is to carry each other's burdens, to step in and help people with their burdens. And so it's like this is a big deal. And he goes on to say, in this way, obey the law of Christ. That when we carry each other's burdens, we're actually obeying the law of Christ. And the law of Christ is this. It's that we would love our neighbor as ourselves. Or in John 13, when Jesus says, love one another. That's the command I'm giving you. That loving one another is not just saying, hey, I love you. I hope your life goes well. But it's saying, I love you, and I'm going to show it by stepping in. By stepping into some of that messiness. By inconveniencing myself to be a blessing to you. And so that's, I think, what it looks like for us to bear one another's burdens. So we're going to have some dialogue, discussion. I hope you have some great discussion, whether it's in your small group or with your spouse, with maybe another family. Hope you have some great dialogue on this. So here's 4 questions for us just to work through this. First question, can you think of a time when you had a heavy burden and someone else stepped in to help you? What did they do that was most helpful? And how did it feel to have someone else come alongside you? So when you had a hard, challenging time in life, a burden that felt overwhelming for you, how has someone else stepped in, and what was that like for you? Question 2, when you have burdens that are too heavy for you or that feel overwhelming, how do you try to manage them? And maybe even, what's your default when you feel overwhelmed? How do you try to manage that? Aside from going to others, how do you manage that? Number 3, sharing our burdens and struggles with others can be difficult. What attitudes and environments make this feel more comfortable for you? So kind of we talked about earlier is, that it can be, we can feel very vulnerable sharing our burdens and struggles. So what are the attitudes and environments that make you feel more comfortable in sharing? Last question is this: what might it look like for you to take a step in helping someone bear a burden? So hope this is helpful. Hope you have some great conversations, and have a great week.